Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is your host, Taylor, and today's episode is unlike no other. Today we are going to have the infamous, the notorious Reality Steve on Let's Talk About It. And before we get started with this, I just want to send out a friendly reminder that it is February, which means it is Black History Month. And I hope that you all are taking some intentional time this month, as hopefully you are every other freaking month, to learn actual Black history, to celebrate, to uplift, to amplify Black stories, Black voices. I want to provide a resource for y'all. Highly, highly recommend following Erica Hart. She spells that ERICKAHART. And they are posting a bunch of resources every day this month. Highly recommend you turn on your post notifications and educate yourself. I will be doing the same myself, because even though people are Black does not mean that they are necessarily always informed on all this stuff, because a lot of our history we were not taught intentionally. So I hope that y'all are focusing on that this month. Today's episode, it's a bit longer, so I'll try to make this intro a little bit shorter. I was really excited to have Reality Steve on the podcast. Over the years, have gotten to know him a little bit more just as a human and a little less as being Reality Steve. One of the things that I guess I am grateful for of going on the show is that I'm able to network and get connected with all kinds of different people, right? Who do all kinds of different cool, like out there things. And I was never super on board with what Steve did and does. And for a long time, I just felt very like scared of him and was just like, oh, like that's not someone, like, no, like that's bad. And really happy that, I had gone on his podcast a few times and, actually felt kind of seen by him. As many of you know, on my actual season of Bachelor, I felt very isolated and very, very lonely, and there were very few people recapping that I felt seen in. And his was one of them. So I always kind of did have that positive association there. But yeah, it's a very interesting relationship. I think Steve would probably say so himself as well. He's definitely kind of goes against the show a lot of the times, and we'll get into that a little bit in this interview as well. But for me, I'm definitely low key hate the drama, but also love the drama. So like, I just want to know what's happening, but then I also don't. And then I sometimes want to be involved, and sometimes I'm like, no, but that's cool to know. I will say going into this, I am friends with many people from the show. I very much value that kind of sacred space. I don't believe I have ever actually shared any kind of like confidential information, nor does Steve really ask me for that, because I think if I speak bluntly about myself here, I think people feel comfortable talking to me because I do talk about more than just the show. And so our relationship in some ways is about the show, but also in other ways isn't at all. I will get a call from Steve and I have no idea sometimes I'm scared and I'm like, what the fuck are you about to tell me? But other times, it's, hey, so can we talk about escorts? What's going on this show? Like, what actually does an escort do? Like, can we talk about that? And I will say, over the last like 6 months, with all the fuckery of 2020, I definitely saw Steve really put in some work personally. And I have respect for that. I just do. So some people might really not like that Steve is on this show in this episode. Some people might feel rubbed the wrong way by our relationship on here. But I think, again, we always have to look at people as a whole. And we might not agree with some things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are a bad person. So I could keep going, but I guess I'll stop it there. I will also say that as this episode is airing, my OnlyFans page is now up and running, and we do talk about that towards the end. I think I'm keeping that part in there. Not sure yet. We'll see. If you listen to the end and the OnlyFans part is in there with Steve, then it's in there. If not, I cut it out. Sorry. I usually don't cut things out of the episodes, but sometimes I'm like, privacy. Don't know on that. But yeah, it is up now. If you go to onlyfans.com/Taymocha, and the subscription fee is $50, which is actually the limit, which I did not realize. But I think is part of what happened after Bella Thorne did all the things that she did on there. So yeah, that was the maximum amount that I can set for myself, which is a whole other rant about sex work and all of that I will probably have at a different time. But if you do want to check that out, that's where you can find it, Taymocha. And with all that said, we got Steve on the podcast, so let's talk about it. All right, so welcome, Steve, to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. This was such an easy setup. We got took me like 3 seconds to get going here.
I'm like, usually I don't think of you as like an old man, but in this setup, I was like, oh, Steve.
Yeah, I'm clueless when it comes to the audio technology of this stuff. Like, I know how to record my podcast, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking, I was like, I would think that you were really like high up in technology intelligence because you've been doing the podcast for so long and all this, but
not at all.
No.
Not in the least bit.
Well, we made it here. Super excited to have you on. It's been on my list for quite some time because I've been on your podcast several times, and I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about you. I feel like there's a lot of curiosity around you and what you do. And you're making a face. What's this face about?
I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting I'm on video. Boy, this is gonna be fun. I don't do video interviews either. So, all right, I gotta be on my best behavior. Okay.
No poker face, Steve. This is a safe space. Okay, this is a safe space.
This is a trust tree.
Yes,
we're in the trust tree.
Exactly. So I feel like basically everybody listening to this is going to know who you are, but for folks who don't know who you are, can you kind of explain in short summary what it is that you do, what you're known for?
I'm Steve.
You are reality Steve.
Yeah. I guess I'm reality Steve to most people. I actually had a conversation recently. Somebody, I think, asked me this on a reader email about, or maybe it was somebody that texted me that was just like, you realize I have you as reality Steve in my phone? And I'm thinking about all the people that I've actually met in person who somehow show me a text or whatever. Most people of all the people that have showed me my name in their phone, I'd say 75 to 80% of them have me in their phone as reality Steve, which is so weird to me. What do you have me in your phone as?
Let me see. I don't know what I have.
I'm curious. Let's
see. Reality Steve.
See, I'm telling you. So, this all started 18 years ago with I was covering other reality shows and then reality dating shows, and then the next one to start up. I had been writing an email and a recap, and it was getting sent around to other people, and it eventually got a pretty decent following. And the next dating show to appear on the television schedule back in 2003 at that time was the first season of The Bachelorette. So they had 2 Bachelor seasons, Alex and Aaron, which I never watched, but I was aware of. And then they had the first season of The Bachelorette, which was Trista. So I was like, okay, I'll just cover this. And it just seems, the concept seemed ridiculous and silly. And we've all dated, so it was very easy to make fun of. And this is in the advent of reality TV. So before it had exploded. And I just kept going. And basically, I wrote an episode recap, or I have written an episode recap for every episode of the show since then. But it wasn't until 2009 where the spoiler aspect came in. So for 6 years, I just wrote recaps and made fun of the show and was awful in terms of my treatment of the contestants on this show. People think I'm bad now or whatever. I mean, you couldn't even hold a candle to the stuff I used to write. It's embarrassing. It's stuff that you just can't get away with writing now. And I think I've grown in that aspect because I would do nothing but comment about like physical appearances, looks, dresses, it was awful. It was terrible. But this was also a different time. It was 2003. It's not excusing it, but I think anywhere you look back in 2003, things were allowed to be said on television and on blogs and stuff that was just, people would laugh at it. Now people would say, the fuck did you just like, that's ridiculous you said that. So I'm glad that those are long gone, and I've changed my writing style and just kind of changed the way I've covered the show. But now it's become more of a spoiler thing. Like writing the recaps for me has just gotten old. Like I'm just tired of writing recaps because social media is, a rough place, and kind of just I mean I still do the recaps because it's what this website Reality Steve is based off of. It's always started as a recap of what we watched on Monday night, but it's changed in that because there's Twitter accounts now and live Instagram feeds. By the time my column comes out the next morning, everyone's already heard 5,000 opinions of what was watched on Monday night.
I was going to say, you got a lot more competition in terms of doing these recaps now.
So I still recap it, but I do it in kind of my own way, and I still kind of make fun of stuff and just try and, throw in quips here and there. But it's mostly been about this Bachelor Nation now is a 24-hour news cycle because every contestant has an Instagram account. So it turns into not necessarily what happened on the show, but what did Victoria post on her Instagram? What did Anna post on her Instagram? Like it's like you have to, that's part of the show now, even though that doesn't air on Monday nights. Yeah. What those people are posting on either stories or their feeds is absolutely imperative to what we're seeing on screen on Monday nights.
Yeah. So. All right, we're going to take a short break right here because this is kind of coming full circle for me a little bit because last year, a lot of people had weddings planned, and I had a girlfriend of mine who had sent out a save the date invitation for her wedding that was supposed to be in July. It was actually right for my birthday. I was like, excuse me, girl. But was so happy for her. And she sent out these save the dates for the wedding that were literally so gorgeous. They had just like the amount of detail to them, the color scheme. It was just beautiful. And she actually used Minted, which is a company that I actually just purchased from and used that I want to share with y'all because they're also sponsoring this episode and the podcast. Super excited. And what I actually ordered, they have all kinds of like great gifts and just a lot of like personalized custom items that you can make for your family, for your friends. And I made like a little beautiful frame with Naya and Calais, like pictures of them to give to Rob and Leonore, like my chosen family, because they don't have a lot of pictures of the family. So put together a beautiful little picture frame for them and gonna give it to them as a little bit of a gift. Coming up in Valentine's Day is actually her birthday. So really, really excited about that. And I think that they will love it. But you can make any design like absolutely yours, and there are fresh designs and with quality materials. I highly recommend them. So y'all can start crafting your unique save the dates or invitations with Minted, made custom for you. You can enjoy 20% off your first order by going to minted.com/Taylor. That's 20% off at minted.com/TAYLOR. And I hope y'all enjoy, and hopefully we can get these weddings happening sometime soon in a safe manner. So get your save the dates all ready to go and looking sharp. And with all that, we can get back to the show. So you kind of spoke a little bit about feeling embarrassed on how you initially had started things. Can we talk about like morally how you feel about doing what you do and how that's evolved and why it's evolved?
I mean, it's become a lot harder in recent seasons because there's so much access to the contestants that the second a contestant is announced, and I was having this conversation with someone earlier today in that the new sport in Bachelor Nation is once the new cast is announced, The new sport is, what's the worst thing we can find out about this person?
Yeah.
Like, that's what
who's
it's
the
become.
most problematic? Like,
who's the
who do we
most
need to
problematic?
cancel?
Who has the worst tweets? Who has the worst backstory of somebody coming forward from their past? And look, I get told stuff every season now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the past, I'd say about 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was just posting everything I was told or making comments about it. Now it's like, it's way more selective. There's way more of a vetting process. And I realize that my job is to cover the show, but I'm not just going to be blind to just covering what airs on Monday night. I have to address the stuff that's going on outside the show. I'd be ignorant if I wasn't. But in doing so, that turns into, you could be affecting somebody's life. But I'm allowed to have an opinion on what people are saying and what, stuff is out there about them on the internet. And, I'm sure we'll get into talking about the escort stuff that happened this season.
Yeah.
It's just... Now it's just become way more for me, kind of more or less breaking down, how far does this contestant last? Is it even worth it to go into? Is it going to affect something on the show? And, is it true? Is the big, the first thing to go over. And so that's where it is. I've done a better job, I think. I'm sure there'll be people out there that disagree, but in terms of what I know versus what I report, or what I've been told versus what I report, I report maybe 5% of the stuff I've been told about contestants.
Yeah.
And in the past, I'd probably say 50% of the stuff I just kind of threw out there. So
is there anything
I think that definitely changed?
Yeah. Is there anything that you have leaked in the past that then came out to be not true, that like you carry guilt on, or that you feel like bad about leaking for one reason or another?
Oh, for sure. The Jenna Cooper story. That's well documented. It was just a horrible job of journalism by me. And I ran with information without vetting it better than I should have. Like, I vetted it to 1 degree when I probably should have vetted it to maybe 3 or 4 degrees before I, ran with a story that Jenna had a sugar baby or sugar daddy, and she was cheating on Jordan Kimball at the time during their engagement after Bachelor in Paradise. That went on for, the story, and it was in the news for about a month, and then it just went away for about a year and a half until Jenna came to me last year, or 2020? Yeah, right before the pandemic hit, February of last year, and came to me and said, look, I've basically been researching this for the last year and a half. Here's everything that I've found on it. And I realized that the information I had been given was wrong. And, the only thing I could do at that point was a few things: apologize, take down everything that I had ever written in regards to it, and give her a platform on my podcast to verbally apologize to her in person, in public, and let her tell her side, and her and I hash out everything that, and it wasn't even like Jenna and I didn't have any. Once she came to me and I realized what I reported was wrong, her and I never had any beef. It was more or less, let's see what else we can find out and see if we can get to the bottom of it. To this day, I don't even know if there's one culprit behind all this. It was just a lot of fan people that really wanted to break Jenna and Jordan up, that were more on the Jordan side and just didn't want Jenna in the picture. And
so they're
did
just
what they
making
can
up
to disparage her. Yeah. Yeah. And creating fake characters, creating fake voices. Like, it got pretty deep. This wasn't like someone sent me an email and said, hey, Jenna's cheating on Jordan with a sugar daddy. It was, get on the phone with Reality Steve, which I got on the phone with somebody, a male that spoke to me and told me I'm the guy that's funding Jenna right now. And I was like, oh, wow, this is big news. But like I said, my vetting process was, I should have vetted him out more. And it ended up not being a legit person. And then once I started getting more and more emails that were like almost backing what this person told me on the phone, it started to becoming like, wait a second, this almost seems like too much and somebody's out to get her. But then the story, they ended up breaking up. It kind of just died. Nothing, nobody was talking about Jenna, but there was this label that
she
Jenna,
got a lot of shit.
Oh yeah. Jenna was a gold digger. She had a sugar daddy. And, and so I was just like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this is what I was told. And then, like I said, Jenna came to me in February of 2020 and laid it all out and came to me with emails, with videos, with pictures. Like, Jenna I mean, for somebody trying to clear her own name, it wasn't just like, I didn't do this. It was, I didn't do this, and here's the proof. And that was really the only thing that was going to convince me, was all the proof that she had. And I don't know if she's ever going to put it all out there. Maybe she will.
Now, couldn't she sue those people for that? Because that's like just disparaging her name.
I think
spreading lies.
I think she could, but I don't know if she's ever nailed it down, because these people were getting really creative about how they were creating. Like, if you create a fake email account and email somebody and harass them or stalk them, and let's just say you did it to me, I would have to like subpoena Google and be like, who does this email address belong to? And something like that is not just an answer you get in 5 seconds. Like, that takes a long time. And I think Jenna's at the point now where the most important thing to her, at least that's the impression I got, was to clear her name. And the only way she was going to clear her name was to go to the source who soiled her name, which was me. And if the guy who reported all this apologizes for it and says, I made a mistake, I think that was all. I think that's all she was looking for, and that's what she got. And it sucks. It's the worst thing that I've ever done, and I'll never. I like I said, I've owned up to it, but you know, there's still people that say, like, when I report a spoiler on something else that has nothing to do with Jenna's season, like, well, you were wrong about the Jenna thing, so how are we supposed to believe you? It's just like, okay, well, how long is that going to last? I don't know, but I know what I did in the Jenna situation. I did as much as I could up to that point. I couldn't take back what I did, so all I did was delete everything about it and then apologize and let her tell her side, which it's not like I let her tell her side and like, okay, Jenna, thanks. Like, I believe her. Like, I saw the proof. So I think she's content with it, and I'm content with the way things are. And Jen and I wouldn't say we're like BFFs, but I could easily text her tomorrow and she would text me back. I think we're fine. And that's good to know, because I know that she, for a year and a half, she took a lot of shit, and it was because of me. And it sucks to have that on your conscience. Yeah.
All right. Time for a short break right here from our sponsor at Upstart. And if y'all have not heard me talk about Upstart before, they're a great platform. Definitely recommend them. If you're someone like me who used to have multiple credit cards and know that tracking multiple balances and due dates and website logins and all of that can be really stressful, but Upstart is making things simple with one monthly payment in one place. So Upstart is the fast and easy way to get a personal loan to pay off your debt, all online. So whether you're paying off credit cards, consolidating high interest debt, or funding personal expenses, over 500,000 people have used Upstart to get a simple fixed monthly payment. They find you smarter rates with trusted partners, and because they assess a lot more than just your credit score, but with a 5-minute online rate check, you can see your rate upfront for loans from $1,000 to $50,000. And you can get approved the same day, and you can also receive funds as fast as one business day. So you can find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/Taylor. That's upstart.com/Taylor. And don't forget to use our URL code, URL, to let them know that we sent you, so that they know where you found them from. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. But definitely recommend you head on over to upstart.com/Taylor after listening to this podcast. So let's get back to the show. So, I mean, how do you feel about the fact that a lot of what you spoil in some sense are pieces of people's private lives that they would have never expected to come out, or that they weren't anticipating to come out, and don't really have any like consent or control over, releasing to the public? Like, how do you navigate that morally?
Yeah, it's tough, because it's a slippery slope, because the second you agree to go on the show, while you're not signing up for being bullied or whatever, you have to realize that you are signing up. We know how Bachelor Nation is, and you are signing up for this race to find out who had the most problematic tweets in the past, who posted QAnon stuff on their Instagram. Like, that's what this has become. And if you don't know that going in on season 41 now, and then next Bachelorette season will be season 42 of this franchise, I mean,
42?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be 26. There's been Matt's 20, Bachelor 25, and the next Bachelorette will be 17. So yeah, Jesus. 42. But it's almost like there's got to be something on the contestants at this point of, yes, you're going on for the experience, possibly falling in love, possibly going on Paradise and meeting somebody there, love of your life, whatever the case may be. But you also have to understand when you sign up to go on this show, it is not all rainbows and daffodils. Like, you have to understand that an ex-boyfriend from college could come out and say something about you on a blog or a TikTok that you're not going to be able to defend until, you know, like you're eliminated from the show or however their policy is now. It seems to be very year to year, but
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I'll ask you this because I'm confused about it sometimes. What we say is that fair game, but it technically, it shouldn't be, but within the confines of this show, just know that it's going to happen. If you go on the show and your mother or father posted a bunch of QAnon stuff or found out that they raided the Capitol, that's going to get out. Whether it has, and that has nothing to do with you dating the person on the show, but I'm telling you, it's going to get out. So unfortunately, that's the way the show is now. And it's almost like,
now, do you ever like ask like people's consent? Like, do you say, hey, you know, I found out this information, you know, this is being sent to me, I'm going to maybe report on it. Like, do you give people that like heads up?
No, because I can't contact contestants. I'm like barred from contacting contestants while this show is airing. And so I can't.
Because you had a lawsuit with them at one point, yeah?
No, I had two.
Tell us about that, whatever you can.
They sued me twice. And one was for contacting contestants and asking for information after they had gotten back from filming and offering them money. And both of the three people that I contacted, two of them responded. One never even responded to me. But two of them did respond and said, while I like your stuff and I read you all the time, I can't. I don't want to get in trouble. I've signed a contract. But they had emails of me emailing them saying, well, fuck your contract. Just I'll pay you. Like, come on. And then they turned my emails over. And it's funny because the two girls that turned my emails over are two people that I've literally spoken to within the last week. Like it's water under the bridge now. At the time, you can speak to this. At the time that you get off the show and you're home, who can you talk to? Nobody. Really. Yeah, nobody. You're like, you want to talk about what you just went through, but you technically can't speak to anyone. So when these girls are approached by me, the Reality Steve guy that spoils the show, they freaked out. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm sure they were just asked by a producer, hey, has anybody contacted you? And I think they said, oh yeah, that Reality Steve guy did. And they were like, whoa, what did he send you? And then they turned it over and I was sued for tortious interference, but nothing ever came of it. We settled. And then something came up again. I was sued again because they said I breached our settlement agreement, which I argued that I didn't. But I didn't want to get into a big back and forth. So I just, the second lawsuit was basically they said, pay us a fine and take down the spoilers you've posted up to this point. And I was like, you know what? I'm fine with doing that because the spoilers had been up a month. Everybody had pretty much memorized what I had spoiled at that point. So I didn't care to take them down. So I was fine. But ever since then, that was in 2012. We settled on the second one. Ever since then, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
I just lay, but to your point, I mean, I just lay off contestants when the show is airing. I can't take a chance that they're going to say something to production. So I don't contact contestants. If they want to reach out to me,
do people do that?
That's on them. I'm not going to say it's never happened, but it's very rare. I think they are scared shitless of their contract. It's very, very rare. But sometimes they have contacted me when the show is airing, but we don't even talk spoiler stuff. Like, to me, I'm just like, I don't even want to go down that route. I might ask them about something else, or we talk about the experience without getting into the spoiler aspect of it. So, yeah.
I don't think I've ever asked you this before. Have people ever came forward with dirt on me or things about me that you have posted or haven't posted?
That's a good question. Nothing that jumps out at me. I'm maybe when Nick's season was airing, somebody said, I'd have to go through my emails. Maybe somebody said I went to high school with that girl or something or I went to college with that girl. But nothing that jumps out to me. I would have probably told you by now if I did. Yeah, I can't think of anything about you.
Well, speaking of people who dislike you from
What a great segue.
from Bachelor, who do you think like hates you the most?
Oh, I mean, are we talking contestants? Okay. Contestants, I'm sure I'm not. I'm sure Victoria Fuller hates me. I'm sure. Who else? I'm sure Ari is not a fan of me. I'm sure
not a fan of me either.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just thinking of all the people whose exes I put. Tayshia probably hates me. Who else? Carly probably hates me. I'm just thinking of everybody whose exes I put on the podcast. Peter Krause probably not a fan of mine. There's a few, but I mean, I try to do the best that I can, and I know that it's a tough position to be in, because I know that as a reporter, I had this talk with Amy Kaufman, who wrote the Bachelor Nation book and who has done a lot of exposés on celebrities in Hollywood who have cheated on, involved in sex scandals and stuff like that. She does a thorough investigation. She has all this evidence of, Brett. I think she exposed Brett Ratner for being a sexual assaulter. And she told me one time, she's just like, yeah, you post a story like that, and of course everybody that's in the Brett Ratner camp comes after you, and you're an idiot, you're an asshole, why are you doing this, why are you ruining our guy's reputation, stop doing this. And she's like, look, I'm just doing my job, I'm reporting facts that I know to be true, and that's what I've tried to stick to. And I admit I wasn't doing that early on, but in the recent seasons I'm trying to stick to fact-based stuff and letting people tell their side of a narrative, and that's really where and that's really kind of where I've been at. And I'm guessing when I put Tayshia's ex on, or Peter's ex-girlfriend on, who exposed the text that he was writing her before and after he went on Rachel's season, it didn't make him look good, but she had proof, she had receipts. So, but Peter was so well liked in the franchise, like that guy was a god to everybody. Yeah. So of course we're going to dismiss what his ex-girlfriend said, and of course we're going to dismiss what his ex-girlfriend said about how he treated her and how he used to gaslight her all the time. She must be lying because we love Peter. It's the same thing with Tayshia. I knew that the Tayshia interview, no matter what her ex-husband said, no matter what he provided, Tayshia is beloved in this franchise. So immediately that interview was not going to be looked favorably upon, but he said some stuff that he wanted to get out. And do I think he could have said some stuff better? Probably. But he was the only one that was ever married to her. So he's the only one that can speak on it. If I would have put on Tayshia's ex-husband's best friend, you would have been like, what the fuck are you putting that guy on for? He wasn't married to Tayshia. But then I put on her ex-husband, and you're like, what? And they're like, well, why are you putting that guy on? I was like, because he was married to her? The only guy that's been married to her in her life? Like, I think he's relevant. You might not like what he has to say because he's talking about your queen, but he is relevant. You can't say that he wasn't relevant to have on. And it wasn't something where I was like, oh, I need some clicks, my podcast is suffering. Like, it had nothing to do with that. If I get a relevant guest or somebody that's willing to speak out, I will give them the chance to speak out. And he was somebody that came to me. I didn't seek him out. I didn't even know who. I knew his name from when she was on Colton season. And immediately within a day of finding out that Tayshia Adams was a contestant on Colton season, it wasn't hard to find out she was previously married, and his name was Josh Burrell. Yeah. But then he was not talked about forever. And then he just didn't like what Tayshia was saying on the show and in interviews about her marriage. So he's like, I want to say something. TMZ's all over me, but you've got a good reputation. I want to come to you. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, let me think about it. And it took him about 2 weeks. And then he decided, after he saw, I think, the episode with her and Ivan's discussion or something, he just got set off by something she said. And he's just like, you know what? I'm ready to talk now. I said, okay. And I put him on.
All right. Time for a short break right here. Coming at y'all with a little mental health check-in per usual from our wonderful sponsor, BetterHelp. They are a online service for professional counseling from licensed professional counselors. It's convenience. Anything that you share is confidential. It's professional. You can go at your own time, at your own speed. And one of the most important things about therapy is finding a therapist that is a good match for you. And if you don't find that in your first time, it's easy and free to change counselors. And you also get matched like within 24 hours. You take a short little quiz so that they can kind of like assess your needs, and it's all in a safe, private, online environment. It's not self-help. It is actual professional therapy from licensed professionals. And so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. So sign yourself up. Get on in there. But for listeners who want to potentially become clients, I really want to encourage y'all to start living a happier life today. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay to get some support. And as a listener of this podcast, you will get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/talkaboutit. You can join over 1 million people taking care of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/talkaboutit. And now we can get back to the show. There's a lot of like deliberation that goes on for you and what you do. Do you enjoy your work?
I enjoy the spoiling aspect of the show. I'm not enjoying the show as a fan anymore, I haven't enjoyed the show as like, wow, this is a great television show. It's just a show that's silly and to make fun of. But since the spoilers have gotten involved, and since I've done, kind of some exposés on some people, I know the backlash of it. It's just funny because when it's the backlash of a character that's not liked on the show, it's like, oh my God, what great tea that Reality Steve had. Like when I had Jed's ex-girlfriend on, the one that he literally left at the dock to go film with Hannah and ends up coming back engaged and then ghosts her, even though he left her a note and all this stuff. When I have her on, the ex-girlfriend of Jed, it's like, oh my God, great tea. But when I have on the ex-husband of Tayshia Adams, it's like, why the fuck did you put him on? So I get it. They're fickle. They're going to like who they like. And when you give them something that they agree with, they love it. When you give them something against somebody who has a very positive edit, like Tayshia does, like Peter Krause does, it's like, oh, I don't believe them. So it's like, okay, well, I'm still gonna do what I think is a relevant story, and I felt Josh was relevant to put on.
Yeah. I feel like the way that you talk through these decisions, like there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and you try to look at it from like the most rational, objective perspective, which can be really hard to do because you very well could just throw shit out there and just be like, yep, I'm going to fuck up your life now because I'm just going to throw this information out there.
Because, the Victoria Fuller stuff is a perfect example last season, with Peter, and from the second she was announced as a contestant, I was getting stuff from a lot of people in the Virginia Beach area saying, Steve, she is bad news. She is well known around here for sleeping around with married men and messing around with married men. She's ruined at least one marriage, if not two, that we know of. And I'm like, okay. And this was before the season started filming. And I'm like, look, again, put it on the back burner. Let's see how far she gets before I even start diving into this. And then she gets the Chase Rice date, and we find out,
they did her so dirty.
Yeah. And then we find out that, I found out that she had dated Chase Rice, and I'm like, okay, well, no wonder she got the Chase Rice date. And then we start getting closer to hometowns, and it's like looking like she's getting a hometown. And then the day of her hometown, I report this stuff, and it ends up being a storyline on the show. So I knew I did that story right because the show even covered it. So, but is it now out there? And if people Google Victoria Fuller's name, is that going to come up? Yeah, it is. But I don't know what to say other than I spoke with the women involved, and while they didn't want to attach their name to it and they didn't want to come forward and speak on the record about it and do a podcast, they told me enough and showed me enough to where I have the proof. If she were to ever, I don't know, come after me, I have the proof, and she knows it, and that's why she'll never come after me. But she also knows that these women were never going to come forward publicly, so she could just kind of say, oh, no, I never did that. Because she knows that, because one of them had a child, and one of them wasn't going to relive the breakup of her marriage. So her child can read about it later on in life. And I get it. So, and I think Victoria knew that. That's why she could get away with when Chris Harrison asked her at the Woman Tell All, these accusations against you, are they true? No, that never happened. Okay, well, I believe it did because I spoke to the women whose marriage was cut short because of and let's just call it inappropriate relationship with her husband. That she witnessed herself and has internet messages that I witnessed as well. You know, she has receipts. But like I said, she was never going to come full, because I asked her, I said, do you want to talk about this? And she said no, but I said, okay, well, for the sake of my story, are you confirming that this happened? And she said, yes, you can confirm that it did happen. I said, okay, that's all I needed. It would have been great to have her name attached to it, but then everybody would have been digging on her and been trying to call her a liar. You know, just like why, I understand why people don't want to get involved, but just because someone doesn't put their name behind it doesn't mean it's not true. You know? They just don't, they know what Bachelor Nation has turned into, and they don't want their public life out there any more than it should be.
It's a very intense fan base. If you weren't to be doing this, what is something else that you would do?
Well, my background is in sports talk radio. I did that for a long time, and I got out of it, and I don't think I would go back into that. But now that I have the website and the podcast, because I mean, I'm sure at some point the show's going to end. Hopefully it's not anytime soon. I don't think it will be anytime soon based on
I hope they improve it a whole lot more before they stop doing it.
Well, they need to, yeah. I mean, they're it's amazing how much they've gotten away with in 41 seasons now. Clearly they're doing a little bit better with back-to-back people of color as leads. We might have a third, next season. We don't know yet, but once the show ends, I think the website will stay as a website, but it might cover something else. But the podcast, I would really like to stay the same, and just interview people in the reality TV world. It doesn't have to be from the Bachelor franchise. So I think I would just keep the podcast going and interview reality TV stars and just anybody that I could really get my hands on.
Yeah. One of the things, I don't remember if it was the first or second time that I was on your podcast, but really appreciated that you did hold space for things that were very true to my life, and that you were like very inquisitive. Like you were genuinely, I think I was talking about like my history of being in abusive relationships, and you were like very genuinely curious and like asking, thoughtful, meaningful questions and holding space for like a conversation like that I was kind of like, oh, maybe he's not like, a creepy douchebag that's just like trying to like ruin everybody's lives. Like he seems like kind of nice.
Well, I mean, I think if people, I've done 220 podcasts. I think if people listen to my podcast, I'm very fair. I really am interested because to me, everybody's got a story. And, especially for when I interview contestants of this show, so many people are, in fact, every contestant on the show is more than the person that we see on TV. So it's almost like when I get somebody on, it's like, let's talk about way more than, let's talk about Taylor Nolan, not Taylor Nolan contestant on Nick Vile's season of The Bachelor of The Bachelor. It's just, it's more than that. Like I care more about Taylor Nolan than I do Taylor Nolan from The Bachelor. So that's the way I kind of look at it. And when I interview people, most people don't have their stories told on this show unless you last really long or whatever.
Yeah.
We might know a little bit more about you, but I'm always interested in how people got cast and what their thought process was the first night at the cocktail party. Like when they looked around the room, were they immediately intimidated by somebody? I always like asking when you were at that first cocktail party, who stuck out to you? Who did you think was like, whoa, they're going to win, even though I'm basing it off nothing other than looks or whatever. And then just thought process as the show goes on and what they're observing. I think it's it's a fun trip to do with contestants. But yeah, everyone's got a story. And I feel like my podcast is the ability to tell that story that they certainly are not allowed to tell on the show. Yeah. It's whatever editors choose to show.
Definitely. Who would you say are like your favorite people from The Bachelor?
Taylor Nolan.
and give explanations why these people are your favorite.
Well, here's I don't like to talk. If I say who my favorites are, then I think people are going to realize that I have a deeper relationship with them than I've probably ever let on in terms of, or deeper friendship with them than I've ever let on. And I don't like to reveal stuff. You and I have talked enough to where I think people know that.
You asked some great questions, really.
Well, thank you.
I never know when I get a call from you, I never know what question is coming my way. It's typically not actually specific to anything going on with the show, but just other stuff that I talk about on like social media. And you are always so open-minded and like ready to learn something that I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. We're going to talk about it.
Like our conversation last week about prostitution and escorting and sugar daddies and sugar babies. And because honestly, I never put a lot of thought into it out of just the basic, prostitution, you're paying for sex. Escort. It was just, I never really, I guess, truly knew what a definition of escort was. And then I had a definition in my mind, and my mind always led to, higher class, older man, younger woman. But it always led to, well, there's got to be sex involved at the end. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. And for the longest time, I never really thought about that. I just assumed, well, if he's paying for her and he's taking her out to an event, surely he's getting laid at the end of the night. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's whatever the woman negotiates. She can negotiate sex.
Yeah.
Or she can choose to just be like, here's what I'm doing. Like for $2,000, I'll go to the event with you, and you're not getting anything after that. And he might just be like, cool. But I always thought, I didn't think it always led to sex. It was just something that was just like, most of the time. But I don't even know if most of the time is an answer. It's, I think it's a case-by-case basis. But yeah, that's one of the things that you and I randomly spoke about last week when I called you out of the blue.
Yes.
And then, so I think people know that you and I talk a lot more behind the scenes. And you and I would call you a good friend of mine from this franchise. Other people I don't want to get into because I don't feel they need to know.
Okay. Well, maybe people that you've watched on the show or that you've interviewed that are your favorites. You work closely with Spivey, who I absolutely love and is an amazing
Ashley for sure. And people know that just because of our live that we do every week. And I love Ashley to death. Emily O'Brien is somebody that not everyone remembers because she was on Ben Flajnik's season, but she's an epidemiologist, and I've had her on at the beginning of the pandemic, and then I had her on like a month ago to just talk, and we talked strictly. I think we spent, the first time I had her on in March was the first time she's ever on my podcast, so we spent the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes discussing her time on Ben's season. And she got to final 6 or 7. She was pretty relevant that season. But her big thing now is she's an epidemiologist at Duke University. And so I had her on in March, right after the pandemic hit, and like, what can we expect?
Yeah.
And, and then I had her on this time. We talked about some of the stuff that she said in the first podcast, which was going off of, they didn't know as much back then. And now here we are 9 months later. It's like, okay, now we know more. We talked about the vaccine. We talked about a bunch of stuff. But she's, love her to death. Who else do I really like? Michelle Money is always a great interview. Courtney Robertson has always been a great interview. I really like talking to them. I don't talk to them nearly as much off air as I do someone like yourself. But those two are really good interviews. And I'm just trying to think of other ones that stuck out. I had Deanna on once. I thought she was great. I don't think I've spoken to Deanna since. Maybe a couple texts here and there, but she was great when I had her on, and that was one of her first podcast interviews. So those are some that stick out to me that I really enjoy having on and gotten to know a little bit more about.
Yeah. Any least favorites?
I honestly, nobody that I interviewed nobody that I've ever had on, I've been like, they were terrible. I never want to talk to them again. I've always thought everybody was interesting and had something interesting to say. But
from like watching the show, like contestants as a whole?
Oh, well, contestants as a whole. I would say someone like Victoria Fuller, I thought handled herself horribly on the show. I wasn't a fan of, clearly Victoria Larson this season. Why is everybody named Victoria? Just a bad person.
My vagina used to be named Victoria, but not anymore.
Yeah, I think Corinne, not a fan of what she did on your show. And not just because I'm talking to you. I think anybody with half a brain can see what Corinne was all about during your season, post your season. The back and forth story she was telling when the DeMario incident went down, like her
helping the child soldiers on.
Yeah, the thing when she got caught with what's his name with Borat with
Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah, Sacha Baron Cohen, like that stuff. Like I think we see what she's all about. So wasn't a fan of her. Those are probably the ones that stick out the most now that I think about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We have to start wrapping up here, but last kind of question for you. What has anybody ever leaked anything about your life? Have you ever had someone spoil anything about you and what that experience was like for you, if that's happened?
Yeah. Nothing. I mean, I'm not a big enough name to where it would ever hit a major media outlet like ET or E or Us Weekly. So nothing like that. But I had a private life incident where I was involved with a stalker. I wouldn't say involved. I shouldn't say that. That was a horrible way to phrase it. I had a stalker that made my life miserable online for a good 2 to 3 years. And it really messed with my head. And it was somebody that was a source that turned into somebody that became obsessed with me and just made my life a living hell. I never felt threatened. My life was never threatened. I never felt that. I knew because I knew who this person was. I knew their name. I knew where they worked. I knew about them. So I could easily, it was very, very manipulative and very, very, again, another one of these things where, a really extensive snow job that they pulled on me with emails and texting from that, using that Text Me app, to create phone numbers. It was bad. I mean, if I told the full story from beginning to end, it would take me an hour. There was not much involved, but yeah, it screwed me. This was probably 2011 to 2014. So it was a while ago.
And so this was a source that then became like obsessed with you. And
a source that gave me information, which ended up being correct. But then when it was like, okay, because most people that come to me with information, I'd say for the most part, it's people that I've never heard from before. They're just like, hey, I have some information for you. This person did. The information turned out to be correct. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't know if they were expecting to stay friends with me because we were talking almost every day because they were giving me information. But then it was like, okay, your information has now come to fruition. It's out there in the public now. You and I didn't have a relationship before you emailed me for the first time. Why do we need to keep talk? Like, I don't know why I'm supposed to still be your friend or whatever. I wasn't like being a dick. It's just like, I don't know what to do at that point. But she just took it to a whole different level. Oh yeah, it was a girl if I didn't say that. She took it to a whole different level where it was just like, to keep me in her life, she was creating lies. And she was creating lies about creating friends that weren't really friends, that were saying, hey, why aren't you talking to her anymore? She's really depressed. She wants to see you. Is there any way she's really in a bad place? And just like, what?
And then she was leaking information about you.
I wouldn't say she leaked information about me. She just, I think she posted a few of my texts that were information related online on my own site. So that was bad. And then after her, I want to say 2 or 3 years later, there was actually a girl that I was involved with briefly. And I'd say it was a purely physical relationship. There was a lot of sexting involved. It ended. She wasn't happy, and she posted some of our text conversation on my site. Actually, no, she didn't. Shitting. She didn't post it. She didn't post it on my site. What she did was she went in the comment section of my site and told people, "Hey, if you want to hear some private messages of Reality Steve's, And she created a Facebook page that you had to, be accepted for.
Mm-hmm.
And she released them on there. And about 10 people went and signed up. Thankfully, one of the people that signed up, after signing up, realized this is really invasive. I need to tell Steve. So she came to me and told me, and her and I ended up dating.
That is not where that initial girl that was talking to you planned on that Facebook group going.
No. This wasn't this. Yeah, there was the stalker, and then this one was completely separate. But yeah, there was a girl that I was involved with very briefly, kind of a fling thing.
Mm-hmm.
We had some, messages back and forth to each other. She got mad at me because I ended things, decided to create a Facebook group and said, hey, do you want to see Reality Steve's texts?
Wow.
10 people joined it. One of them got out and said, wow, that's pretty invasive. Informed me of it, but didn't want to get in trouble with the group. So I had to keep it covert. And I was like, thank you for sharing this with me. I had no idea. And then her and I just kept talking and we ended up dating for a good almost a year.
And you have dated other people from reality TV.
Well, no, I mean, Kat.
You dated Kat, who was on Big Brother. It was on Big Brother.
She's the only person from the reality TV world I've ever dated.
Yeah. Would you ever date someone from Bachelor?
I mean, I'm not against it. There's a couple major factors as to why it probably won't happen. Number one, I'm a good 20 years older than the majority of the women that go on the show. I don't think they're looking for someone like me. So there's that. But if somebody was maybe late 20s, early 30s, which is probably my cutoff for age. Kat was 30, 31. She just turned 31. So I'm 15 years older than her. But the age wasn't an issue with Kat and I.
Yeah.
But the women on the show, we know tend to skew 24 to 27-year-old range.
Yeah.
I don't think they're interested in a 45-year-old me, but maybe that's just me I don't know.
Has there ever been someone, though, that you felt like you were interested in, that like you wanted to date?
Yeah.
Did you pursue that? I just can't even imagine did that actually happen?
No.
What? Am I doing the spoiling now, Steve? Do I have a story here?
Well, it's funny because it came up this past weekend. I just got a hair up my ass and I did one of those true false things on Instagram story.
Yeah.
And that ended up being one of the questions. And I went into detail, not in detail, but I said, there was somebody that I was interested in this franchise, let them know about it. And in so many words, they rejected me, but I didn't say who it was. And I don't think I'm going to, because I guarantee people are going to go to her and say something. And she doesn't need that. She doesn't need that type of harassment, but but no, it was somebody that, I was interested in, and I said I wanted to spend some time with her, and I was interested if and in so many words, she was like, I don't think it would, I can't remember the wording. I kind of want to forget it because, it sucks to get rejected, but that was there was one, but like I said, ever since that, it's tough because of the age thing. I'm a lot older than these contestants, so I don't think they would be interested in me. And the second thing is just that if it is somebody from this franchise that maybe is interested in me, they would have to understand that if they want to have any future in this show and maybe appear on Paradise, they can throw that out the window, because the second you're involved with me, you will be blackballed from this franchise. So, and very few people in this franchise want to be blackballed from it. They want to stay in Bachelor Nation and go to stuff. And even if they don't want to be on Paradise, just dating me, I think they're going to hear it from other people in the franchise. Why are you dating that guy? Other guys in the franchise will tell that person, why are you dating Reality Steve? Shit, Kat got it all the time. So I know that people in this franchise would. So, but again, it hasn't really come up. If somebody from this franchise has been interested in me, I'm not aware of it. So, I mean, clearly there's tons of attractive women in this franchise, and there's a few that you're just like, but I don't go out of my way to pursue it, because I just feel like I'm too old for them. I don't think they look at me that way. So,
well, I'm happy that you did put yourself out there, though, because that is a hard thing to do. And, you know, you don't know if you don't try. But it definitely would be very difficult. I think even, you know, holding somewhat of a friendship with you being someone in the show, I think it has its difficulties because, you know, I'm happy to talk about escorts. I'm happy to talk about racial shit, but like, if someone from the show who I'm friends with tells me something or, you know, we talk about something, like that to me is like a sacred, trusted bond that like we've gone through this collective trauma. And it's like, I know how shitty that can feel for people to, you know, say things about you and to not have control over that like, I think it sucks because it is very rare, I think, in the franchise that people actually develop like actual safe sense of community with each other. It becomes very competitive. It becomes very like a popularity contest. And I think we definitely need to have a more genuine community amongst actual Bachelor alum because we do all go through some really fucked up shit. It is really hard. Even if you have a great experience, it still is hard. You're still going on national TV and everyone has something to say about you, even if it is positive. So I could see where like actually dating you could definitely be a very, very difficult venture when your actual literal job and day to day, you know, is figuring out spoilers and leaking things and covering it, that there'd have to be some like major boundaries there between you and that person, even as friends.
Yeah. And the cool thing with Kat was, even though she wasn't Bachelor franchise, she was reality TV world, but she didn't ask me a thing about the Bachelor. She didn't care. She didn't ask me like, oh, you know, because I was dating Kat while I was spoiling stuff on Claire and Tasha season and Matt's season, and she never asked me once. And that's ideal for me. I hope people understand also, if they're interested in dating me, that they're not going to get like find out my sources. And there's a part of me that's always feared that someone is just wanting to date me so they can tell their friends how I get information and share that. And that's a big thing with me that people are more interested in, like I said earlier with you, I'm more interested in Taylor Nolan than Taylor Nolan from The Bachelorette of Nick's season. That there are people, and I know that there are in the past, and it has happened with me, there are people more interested in dating reality Steve than Steve Carbone. And I don't want people who are interested in dating reality Steve. That doesn't interest me in the least bit. It's a turnoff. So, but you know, I thought I had a chance. It didn't pan out, and I'm fine with it. And but yeah, I met. It's funny you bring that up because this is the first time I ever mentioned it was this past weekend when I was doing that true or false on Instagram, and then here we are 3 days later and we're talking about it again. And I never thought it would get brought up, but no, it was interesting.
There's definitely a lot of other reality shows to pick from, but maybe your person is not a reality TV person.
And I'm not saying I would only date reality TV people. Kat was the first one I ever did. So I'm not against it, and I'm not has to be, you know, it's just it's whatever. It's whoever you vibe with, whoever I feel comfortable with, and just go from there. Yeah.
Well, I hope that you do find that because, you know, your job, it's definitely a different kind of job. It's definitely, you know, interesting. And I mean, sometimes I got questions. I'm like, how? What? Like how? You know, it's interesting, like behind the scenes of stuff, but definitely hope like the best for you. And I do think you have come a long way from how you cover things and your thoughtfulness in it. And, you know, even sometimes like double checking things with me, right? Of like, oh, like, you know, people are talking about this, but like, what's your perspective on that? And it is very, very thoughtful.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you answering when I ask, because there are things that, you know, I know I know I had you on, right, I think maybe a week or two after George Floyd. I think it was right around that time. You were on the podcast because there was, you know, we talked about a lot of that stuff. And I was, you know, I grew up in middle class white Orange County, and I was about as white privileged as you can get. But when the word white privilege started getting thrown around this summer, I didn't know what the definition of it was. I just thought it meant spoiled white people, and that wasn't what it was. It was it had to be I didn't know what it was until I read about it, and then you explained it to me more, that I've never had to suffer. And then I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I've never had to suffer for anything in my life because of the color of my skin. Not once, not job related, anything in the workplace, anything in anywhere. I've never been discriminated against or wasn't able to achieve something because I was white. And I realized that's what white privilege was, not just, oh, he's a spoiled white kid, So that was big this summer. And that opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. And I realized, I don't get offended when people say, oh, stop throwing the phrase white privilege around, stop making it about race. But it's just like,
everything is race.
Reality. I mean, I don't get how people don't see that, but
you didn't for a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm saying even now, like how people can say like, this is what the definition of white privilege is, and then people are still like, oh, well, no, that doesn't pertain to me, when it clearly does. Like, I don't know why people can't admit that I don't understand why white people who have never been discriminated before in their life because of the color of their skin, or never been rejected for a job because of the color of their skin, can say that they don't have white privilege now.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Yeah.
How do you think that's like impacted? We should be wrapping up, and I should be getting on a different interview right now. But how do you find that that's changed how you cover the show, if at all? How it's impacted how you engage with and how you cover the show, learning more about the systems in place of racism within our country?
I mean, I think the running joke for the longest time was how white this show was. Like, we've all known it because it's just all you have to do is look at the screen. But now, since this summer, and then, we have Tayshia brought in and we have Matt brought in, and then not only leads are people of color, but the cast is, clearly way more diverse. Ashley Spivey posted this summer when everything was going on, Brad Womack's, the 2 seasons that he was the Bachelor, the group photo that you take on night 1, and he had 50 women, and one of them was a woman of color, like 50 women. Like, people were like, well, maybe Brad didn't like white women. Well, how about maybe Brad shouldn't have been chosen in the first place if all you were going to cast was white women? Like, again, that's where I'm saying, like, the immediate thought was, from a lot of people's thinking was, well, maybe he didn't like black women or Latino women, and that's why they didn't cast them. When you're first, it's like, if that's your first thought when you see the group photo, then that's the problem. You're the problem. You're not seeing the other side that other people are seeing. And, I think for me, I've understood now how bad it's gotten. I mean, they're improving this season with, I don't know if are we talking spoilers? Can I mention spoilers or no?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I mean, just the fact that Mac does have 3 of his final 4 women are people of color that we've never seen in the history in 41 seasons. It's never happened.
Yeah.
Shit, we've never had more than 1 in the final 4.
Well, we had Rachel, and that was first in my season.
Rachel was the
non-white
first black contestant to ever make, to make Final 4. And then Eric Bigger made it on Rachel's season. And then Mike Johnson was 5th on Hannah's season. And then Tayshia had Ivan. She had 1. But Matt has 3. Like, we've never had more than 1. And now we have 3 in one season. So I think it's positive. I think that could lead to another person of color as our Bachelorette. We just don't know yet. But I'd say that, the show, I think I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, and I don't think I'm breaking any news here. I don't think if what happens this summer, if George Floyd doesn't happen and the racial tension doesn't happen this summer, do Tayshia and Matt become our Bachelorette and Bachelor? I'd say no. I'd say they would have continued on the same path that they were on for the previous 39 seasons. At that point, it would have been 39 seasons. Because Claire would have been we knew Claire would have been our Bachelorette.
Yeah.
The pandemic is the only thing that stopped that. Would Matt James have been named the Bachelor 2 weeks after George Floyd if A, he wasn't black, and B, he wasn't BFFs with the most popular man in the franchise, who will be on next week's episode? Probably not. And I think that's not racist to say. No. That's not, you know that. Yeah. I think a lot of people know that. I don't know why a lot of people don't want to admit it, but
I think it could have maybe been their thought process going forward with Matt going on Claire's season, but I don't think they would have announced it when they did if
they wouldn't have done
happening.
it on a Friday GMA where all of a sudden it just popped into our head like, oh, by the way, your next Bachelor is going to be Matt James and he's not filming till October. We're going to announce it the second week in June. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? But if nothing happens this summer with that, and there wasn't riots and there wasn't protests and anything like that, I'm pretty sure this franchise would have continued what they were doing. Because then, I don't think the fan base would have been as on board with some of these changes and actually pushing the show in that direction. Yeah. Like the Batch Diversity campaign, does that start up this summer? If it isn't, like, even though we've known it's been a white show, Batch Diversity could have started 5 years ago. Like, why did they start up this summer? Because of everything that was going on. It's like, you know what?
Yeah. In
light of everything else that's going on, here's another example of white elitism, whatever you want to call it. We were talking white privilege. Like, this show has just been a white show for so long. It's like, why not make it a little more diverse? There's nothing wrong with that. And we're seeing that because we're getting, I mean, as boring as I think Matt is, I think we're still getting better conversations with Tayshia's men, with Ivan, her conversation with Ivan, her conversation with Brendan, the Abigail conversation with Matt. It's just, I think we're getting better, even though Matt just kind of sits there and nods and I'm not Matt's like whatever to me. At least I think we're hitting, take away all the bullying stuff and all that stuff that's going on because that's just getting old. When they are having decent conversations, they're better than the conversations I think that we've had in past
There's
seasons.
definitely some small baby steps in the right direction. And I hope they keep going in that direction and changing up things a little bit. We do have to wrap up. I'm sure people already know this, but where can people find you?
Everything is under the Reality Steve moniker. It's Twitter is at Reality Steve. Instagram is at Reality Steve. The website's realitysteve.com. And my podcast is the Reality Steve podcast. So you can get on all platforms where you can listen to podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Plus, all that stuff.
What did you think of my tweet to you this week?
I didn't know where I didn't know where you, I didn't know why you did that. I didn't care that you did. I just didn't know why that was the hill that you were willing to die on.
Did I die on that hill, Steve? I don't think I died.
No, not die on that, but like that was like why you. I don't know. I didn't. Like I said, I was just like, oh, okay. I didn't.
Did what I say make sense?
I'm trying to remember what it was now.
So Brett had posted, can we get a one-on-one for another woman of color, another Black woman, and you had said, like, to be fair, before Matt's season, there had only been
but up to Rachel's date, there had been 4 one-on-ones this season, and 3 of them were with Black women. So that's why I was like, well, Brett, he has been out with, because he said all these great Black women, and Rachel gets a one-on-one, and then so I was just like, I was just focusing on that sentence alone, which was Rachel got a one-on-one. But yeah, you say all these Black women, but 3 of the 4 one-on-ones he's had have been with women of color. So just to be fair. And I was just like, that's why I was saying it matter of fact. I wasn't even mad at Brett or anything. I was just saying, I think Brett probably forgot that there might've been only 4 one-on-ones this season and 3 of them were with Black women. But
I think it's because it's like, we might get some of these one-on-ones with other Black women on the show, but majority of what we're seeing on the show is a centering of, 2 Black girls. One, Rose had covered this in their episode and it was really good. What we're mostly seeing is the centering of white mediocrity with people like Victoria. And so it's like when we're dealing with most of that and then we get these little tidbits of these one-on-one dates, it's like, it would be nice to see that. And then my tweet to you is basically like, well, to be fair, before Matt's season, like, almost exclusively all the one-on-ones were all with white people. And obviously not to give Matt the variety and, kinds of women and backgrounds and whatnot. Like, obviously he should have that. But I was just saying, sometimes playing that devil's advocate like doesn't really help or go to the point that I know you do support. Like, I know that you probably would have agreed with that. So then it was like, well,
that's why I was wondering why you did it, because I was like, how I feel about the way this lack of diversity in this franchise has gone. So why were you tweeting me that when you know how I stood on it? But I didn't really,
because still what you said didn't seem in alignment with that. I know you were thinking like super logistically and like objectively, but sometimes like I've had so many conversations with other like white guys who are my friends, and they will try to play devil's advocate and stuff and point out these other things and get really specific. And it's like, okay, yes, but some of these things we do also have to zoom out and look at the bigger context of it, because that piece does matter too. And it doesn't help sometimes. Like, yes, your point was valid. That was factual. Yes.
Yeah. Cause I think that's what it was. I was just producing a fact that I thought Brett, when he said that, I read Brett's tweet as, why can't a black girl get the next one-on-one? And when I was just like, well, 3 of the 4 have, so it's not like they're it's not like they're discrediting. Like, I think it would have been a real problem this season if, up to Rachel's date, he would have only had 1 black girl have a one-on-one. Like, I think the fact that they did give 3 was, like you said, it's small steps for this franchise, because anything they do that's progressive racially is better than anything they've done in the previous 40 seasons, because they've done nothing progressive racially in 40 seasons. Yeah.
It's a step, small baby steps with them. Yeah. But yeah, I knew I didn't say anything to you after that tweet, and I was like, oh yeah, let me double check there on that. No, I was fine. But thank you so much for coming on. Obviously so much more we could get into, but appreciate you sharing your time and your experiences and all your thoughts on all the fun stuff.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure we'll text soon about something sexual in nature.
A little sex Q&A. Oh no, this was my last question for you. Because when we were talking about the race stuff and everything, like, you Venmo'd me, and I was so appreciative of that, and I didn't even know it was you. And I was like, oh,
when?
Thank you. When, like, over summer, when you were like asking me like questions about.
Oh yeah. Oh, and then you were asking, and people were saying like, hey, can we send you a tip, Taylor, or whatever, for all the information that you pass out? Yeah. And then I Venmo'd me. Oh, so you didn't know it was me? I mean, you did.
I didn't know it was you until after we talked about it, because then when we were talking, you were like, oh, did you get my Venmo? And I was like, what? And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was you. Because it came up as Steve C. And I was like, I don't know who that is. But I was like, wow, thank you.
Yeah, because I'm in your phone as Reality Steve. That's why. See, it all circles back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the podcast. Yes, it was a perfect way to end.
So you have dated someone in the past. I've asked you questions about this as I've kind of started mine up. But you're somewhat familiar with OnlyFans. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So my question for you was, are you going to sign up for my OnlyFans?
Okay, 1, is it weird if I do? And 2, what is your monthly?
Like, am I going to see you pop up on my OnlyFans? I don't know.
What are you charging? What is your monthly?
So it's $50, which is apparently the max that they will let you do. I wanted to do more, but apparently $50 is the max that you can do for subscription. What
am I getting for $50 a month? I want to know what I'm signing up for here.
So I'll be posting some more sexy stuff, like more skin than what I show on Instagram. Then I'll be sharing some other resources and stuff about like toys and lube and like porn and like videos and stuff that I can, but it's like more dangerous to like share on Instagram. And then I'll also be like promoting other sex workers as well. So like getting you access to more people. And then like dipping my toe into sex work and maybe my toes. I have a feeling I'll get some toe requests. So we'll see how that goes.
That's got to be the easiest money in the world. If a guy sends you a message on OnlyFans and says, Taylor, I will pay you $30 to see your feet. Like, I would just be sending that guy foot pictures until the end of time. Like,
yeah.
Why wouldn't you send pictures of your feet?
I might need a pedicure, but
Is it I don't know. Is it weird if I don't know?
So let me ask you this then. Before I had asked you, would you have thought about doing it? Because you've asked me, you're like, did you do it yet? And I'm like, no, but I'm working on it.
I asked you if you were doing it because I wanted to know if I was going to get a free account.
Even Zach was asking me for that. And I was like, I don't know. You might have to pay for that. You don't have to answer, but I just thought it was a fun question. It was a fun question.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Because nobody else in Bachelor has an OnlyFans. So then I was also like, I don't know, is he going to cover this? He's going to like go in there and be like, Taylor's doing this.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I do we know for a fact that nobody in Bachelor Nation has one, or is it possible that somebody has one and is keeping it private?
I'm sure that's possible, but nobody that I know of.
Yeah, nobody in Bachelor Nation has been public about it.
No.
There's a couple of Temptation Island girls. I know there's people in the Big Brother world that have it. I know there's people in, I think some people told me someone from the Challenge, maybe someone from the Challenge has one too.
Sure,
but like you said, it's different. And not everyone is doing the same thing because there's so many levels of OnlyFans. You could just do strictly lingerie. You could do topless. You could do fully nude, and you could do I'm having sex on my OnlyFans account, like Chad Johnson. So, that's the person in Bachelor Nation that's.
No, I was hoping you weren't even going to say his fucking name. I was like, doesn't exist.
Yeah, Chad. So, but does he really? I mean,
doesn't count.
I guess we're talking about the females, and like I don't know of any females in Bachelor Nation, that have one.
Yeah.
At least, and if they do, they aren't promoting it. Because word would have gotten out in 30 seconds if somebody was. So
it's just that I talk about it openly with no shame. So it's like, it's no secret, and it's not something people can use against me to be like, oh my God, you see what Taylor's doing? Yeah, I am doing it because I want to fucking do it. And there's nothing wrong with doing it.
And you know what? Like I said, this is OnlyFans. You and I have talked about this. I've come around on OnlyFans. I was at a point where I think when it first became a thing, maybe 9 months ago, a year ago, I was just like, who's doing this? And then I found out, I did more research. I spoke to people who had accounts. And some people that one person even showed me, and some people have told me how much they make on it. And these people aren't even doing nudes. And I'm like, so this is really no different than someone who has an Instagram account that's nothing but, sexy. It doesn't even have to be lingerie pics, like, bathing suit pics, bikini pics, 1-piece, 2-piece, whatever.
Yeah.
You're putting that out for free on Instagram. Why not put it on your OnlyFans and get paid for it? Like when I saw the money that some of these people are making, who am I to tell you what you should be doing with, pictures that you want to put out? Like if you want to, it's your decision. It's not anybody's call, but are there people that are just like, buttoned up conservative that think that's wrong? Of course there's going to be people that are going to say that, but I'm not one of those people. I was just against it at first in terms of, I don't know how I'd feel comfortable with somebody that I was, ever with doing it. And then when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? First off, they're coming home to me at the end of the night. They're not coming home to them.
Yeah.
These people are getting a teaser. I'm getting the real thing. So fuck it. I don't care. And it took me a while to come around on that. But
I think Zach is very excited about that part of it.
Yeah, I think, and he should be. There's probably a little bit of, I mean, I probably I would still have probably a little bit of an insecurity, just myself of being like, wow, other people are seeing the person I'm with being super sexy. And even though I get to, be in bed with her, you kind of like, well, what if one of these guys entices her and she leaves me for somebody on OnlyFans or something like that? Like, there's those thoughts that cross your head. I don't think it was something that would ever take over my thought process, but I'm not going to lie and say it wouldn't be like, it wouldn't cross my mind, you know, but it wouldn't be a relationship killer is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, I view you as someone that like is now kind of on board that supports sex work and all of that. So, yeah. Thank you.
It.
Yeah.
Go get it.
I'm going to go get my bag. I got student loans to pay off.
I was going to say, like, I've seen you in your lingerie on Instagram, on your Instagram stories. Yeah. So So I don't think anything that you put translating that to your OnlyFans would be anything crazy for me to see. Now, if you started playing with yourself on a video on OnlyFans, I'd be like, I don't know should I be watching this?
You'd be like, unsubscribe.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't know if that's for me because I know you. It just, it'd be like, well, Steve, you watch porn, but I don't know the porn. I don't know the women in porn.
Yeah.
I've never met you in person, but we've spoken enough and we've FaceTimed enough to where it would be like, Taylor, I just saw you get off on camera. Like, I don't know how to react.
I'm dipping my toe in. I'm not going to.
If you ever got to that point. Yeah. If you ever got to that point where you had no problem using a toy on a video on OnlyFans, I'd be like, and I happen to be a subscriber. I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that. I don't, like, not for you. You can do it. I don't know how I'd feel watching it.
Yeah.
And then talking to you the next day. I'd be like, Taylor. I feel like this is a question I should have started with because there's so much here. But regardless, if you subscribe, don't subscribe. I know you do support it, and I've appreciated when are you starting it? Do you have a start date?
It's by the time this airs, it'll be up, and it's onlyfans.com/Tamoka. Tamoka on everything. So it'll be up, and I'll just be slowly dipping my toe into that kind of stuff. But really excited about it, and hopefully I can pay off some student loans.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, we've heard plenty of stories, and I've seen I've seen evidence. I've been told how much some people are making on that per month.
Honestly, had I not heard from you about that, I don't know that I would have felt so inclined to start it myself.
Yeah.
When you told me that, I was like, I got to fucking get on here.
Yeah. And it's all based on your content. It's how good the quality is and how much content you put out there. If you post once or twice a month, you're not going to make a ton of money.
No, I'll be posting
diligent with it
every other day, basically.
Yeah. And I think if you're diligent with it, and they have, I've heard this, but then I've seen people do it. Does Instagram have an issue with linking?
They do.
What's
even
their policy?
Honestly, I'm scared. I was gonna just DM the link to people, but I received messages from other people who use it that are like, "Don't do that," because they literally are just looking for the words OnlyFans everywhere. So I think if anything, I'm just going to verbally say it in a story of if you want my link, you can go. It's onlyfans.com/Tamoka and you can go there.
I know this. I know of somebody that has an OnlyFans account that they have an OnlyFans account, and on their Instagram, on their bio on Instagram, it has their name of www. Let's just say for you, TaylorNolan.com. And if you click on that, it brings them to their OnlyFans account, even though that's not their OnlyFans address. So that's a way to get it. That's a workaround, is just do that.
Definitely. That's definitely something I've looked into too. I'm having a friend of mine who's a sex worker and sex therapist, mentor me on it so that I'm doing it in a safe way and everything. And that is something that she brought up too. But then I was kind of that still makes me nervous. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But
we could have made this whole podcast about sex work, because now I got more questions. I want your friend that's in your friend that's in it. Your friend that's in it is. We're going to talk for another 15 minutes if I ask this. So let's end it. We'll end it now.
I know. I'm I'm supposed to be a guest for someone else. I'm I'm so sorry. I'm so late now. But no, this has been great recording. Always great chatting with you about non-Bachelor things and getting your perspective on things, and just having those really objective, logical conversations and debates almost in a way as well. And I've always really appreciated your thoughtful, kind recaps of me, at least. And the fact that, people like Spivey and Charlene have even worked with you and whatnot, I think does speak to a bit of your character, and kind of break a little bit of misconceptions of what people might think of you. Certainly haven't always been the best, but definitely have made some improvements. And I think that's really important to know.
Yeah. And I've never shied away from the stuff that I reported in the past and stuff that I've said in the past that, I've changed my writing style. I've changed with the times. I feel like you have to, or else you will, not get canceled. I hate the word cancel culture, but
you like own up to it. You like take accountability. And that's where I'm like, okay, I can fuck with you. Cause
there's a misconception going around that I can't admit that I'm wrong. And yet every time I've been wrong with a spoiler or the Jenna thing, like I've literally come out and said 1,000 times that I was wrong. Like when I was wrong about, Tayshia, not being engaged to Zach and they weren't yet. It's like, I was wrong. I had wrong information. I don't blame it on anybody else. Yes, all the information I get is second, third, because I don't get any information firsthand because I'm not on set. I'm not seeing it with my own eyes. But I'm only as good as the information that I get. But if I do post information and it happens to be wrong, it's still on me. It's not on the person who told me. And so I'll always admit when I'm wrong. I have no issue admitting when I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. We got to wrap it up. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me on.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkabout@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy Podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy Podcast on your podcast app.